because you didn't, we can't vote.
All right. If we could quiet down, we're going to get started with the public hearing. Kim, can you take roll call, please?
Commissioner Supla,
Here.
Commissioner Attell,
Present.
Commissioner Lambert,
Here.
Administrator Bruner,
Here.
Attorney Baxter,
Here.
and Kim Purcell, Montezuma County Clerk and Recorder. The Montezuma County Board of County Commissioners will hold a public hearing for the purpose of reviewing and determining a C.R.S. 24-65-1-101 designation consisting of properties which make up the Phil's World Trail System, located 2 miles more or less east of Cortez, Colorado, consisting of 730 acres more or less of state-owned leased property and 2,400 acres more or less of Bureau of Land Management, situated in sections 3, 4, 9, 10, 11, 14, 15, 21, 22, 23, 26, 27, 28. Township 36, Range 15, NMPM. The hearing will be held Monday, January 11, 2016 at 1:30 p.m. Commissioners' Hearing Room, Montezuma County District Courthouse, 109 West Main, Cortez, Colorado. Interested persons may attend and give input. Information may be obtained from the Planning Office, Room 305, District Courthouse, Cortez, Colorado, or accessed online at http://MontezumaCounty.org Web Departments Planning, or by contacting the Planning Department at 970-565-2801 with questions. The file can be inspected in the Planning Department during regular office hours. Dated this first day of December 2015, Kim Purcell, Clerk, Board of County Commissioners, Montezuma County, Colorado. Published in the Cortez Journal on Friday, December 4th, 2015.
All right, thank you, Kim, and welcome everybody. As you know, we're here today to discuss a proposed 1041 on the Phil's World BLM lands. We'll have our Planning and Zoning Director, Leanne, kind of give us an overview of what it is that we're trying to do here.
Okay. The Planning Commission prepared and gave recommendations to the board several weeks ago. John has revised these. We sat down and came up with a resolution. I don't know how many of you have seen this or not, but we'll make copies for whoever needs.
It's posted on the internet website.
It is also on the website. So it would be no privately owned in holdings. It would just be the BLM managed lands as well as the state-owned land, which is currently leased. The BLM is still in the process of being leased. It would just be those areas that would have the 1041 designation on them, which would not prohibit but restrict drilling activities or other activities proposed on the existing trail system, as well as the expansion in the event that anything came up that might hinder their efforts there on the trail system. I don't know what you want to add.
And I think what we should do today is have a discussion, and then if the commissioners decide to go forward with this, then continue the hearing out so that we can meet all notification date requirements, make sure that we have it published for long enough after we hone it in and fine tune it. That draft resolution is not complete, obviously, and has some blanks in it. There's no exhibit attached to it, and also I think discussion today would be to figure out exactly what we want in it. If this thing goes forward, then I think that what we ought to do is continue the hearing for a few weeks. And then we need to have this thing published for really the 30 days. And then the commissioners can adopt it if they want to, and then it will take effect 30 days after that.
Thank you, John.
So the soonest would be February 22nd, from what I'm looking at, since we don't have a hearing for President's Day.
Well,
Finding these a draft.
we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Commissioner Ertel, do you have anything?
No, I just, I think that this hearing, we want to hear from ultimately hear from the public on what their sentiments are in regard to this, and I think it's the commissioner's due diligence in trying to protect Phil's World in the best way that we can, given what we have out there and its impacts on our community, both economically and exploring different options to keep intact what we have out there in that property, so.
Very much in agreement with Keenan. I think you've got something that's valuable, protected. Look at the best way to do so. And I think it's forthcoming.
Right, and with that being said, we're gonna open this up to public comment. If you can, try to keep it at 3 minutes, at all possible, but if you would come to the microphone, state your name and your address, and the commissioners will listen to you, and just let us know what's on your mind.
Gayla Pock, 7672 County Road, CC, Pleasant View. I think this is probably a good idea, but who'd know? The public notice said that information about this would be available a month ago. It wasn't. I've asked several times. Last Monday, I specifically asked John Baxter for information about this. Well, he didn't have it, but I kind of got the impression he was planning on mailing me something, but I haven't gotten it yet. You've got an awful lot of people here that maybe have seen it on the website. It's been available for a few days, I guess. But I think you got the cart before the horse when you put out the public notice. You really needed to have something for us to look at so that we could do some public input, because how can I comment when I don't know what you have on the table? So I'd love to see what John has come up with, because then maybe I could make a public comment. Thank you. Thank you, Leanne.
You're welcome. Excuse me.
MB McAfee, 22277, County Road 20. I support the efforts of the commissioners and the Planning Commission to protect and develop Phil's World for multiple use, I hope, in an effort to retain and increase the value of this recreation area that we have outside of town. I think this is an excellent show of your public support for outdoor recreation to begin improving an important aspect of recreation and for economic development in our county. I'm also a firm believer in a statement that was written by Bill Bemis over 30 years ago to differentiate between leaders and managers. Leaders do the right thing, managers do the thing right. And I examine this statement now because as commissioners, you are leaders or executives, and you are also managers or legislators, because you have many roles. You have dual roles as in this county government. You are executives when you consider protection of Phil's World or constructions of solar farms, for instance. You're legislators when you enact legislation via land use decisions to determine the policies and procedures for making things like Phil's World or solar farms into reality. You have those two roles. Transparency is essential for buy-in of your ideas from constituents. And these are folks that two of you will be relying on for votes probably this coming November. There has been no explanation from any of the three of you, or from the planning department, or from planning and zoning, as to the haste for making Rule 1041 apply to Phil's World. In this matter, you have acted improperly. The December 4th notice that the Colorado Revised Statutes 2465.1-101 would become part of the county law was improper. There was nothing for the public to consider about that topic for reviewing and designating Phil's World as coming under the statute when that notice was put in the paper. This information is to be noticed to the public 30 days prior to the hearing, and as you know, it's been pointed out, obviously there was nothing. In fact, there was nothing for the public to see about this coming from this group acting as now as legislators until January 6th. It's a long time after December 4th. In addition, at the December 17th Planning and Zoning Board meeting, there was nothing on that public agenda saying they would address HB 1041 rules for Phil's World. That was not on the agenda of the December 17th Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Yet at this meeting, Dennis Atwater, who was chair, had prepared a 57-page document that the group pondered for more than an hour and then decided to send on to the commissioners. So it's my opinion that P&Z acted improperly in not even having this item on their agenda for discussion that night so the public could come and talk to them about it. The public actually knows something about this. Public could have come to the P&Z meeting and maybe helped them straighten out this long, awkward document that you all got handed on the 21st. It was indicated when I asked, why is the rush for this? When I asked, why was the rush for this, Keenan, I will talk. Okay, thank you. You don't need.
There's a lot of people here.
Yes, I understand. So I will talk. Thank you. When I asked why was this going on, why did the commissioners want this, the answer I got was, this is what the commissioners want. Sorry. Yeah, okay. I support protecting Phil's World and the proposed expansion. While perhaps you are the leaders and executives on this front, you have been poor as managers and legislators. You are not doing the thing right. I have one more. Okay, I have one more point. I have one more point to make, if I may, please. It's well known that you do not support the notion of a master leasing plan.
This is
But you-
about the 1041.
Yes, but I want
keep
to point out you cannot use 1041 powers on Phil's World as spot zoning to try to prevent or keep out oil and gas development from public lands. That was my point. All right, thank you.
Would you clarify when you're in support of oil and gas leasing in Phil's World? Is that what that statement just said, just to get you on the record?
No, I am.
Oh, okay.
I support
I thought I heard
Rule.
that.
I support Rule 1041 for Phil's World.
Okay.
I think it's
You brought up oil and gas leasing on.
But I wasn't able to finish my point, Keenan, because I was asked to be quiet.
Thanks.
All right, thank you, MB.
There you go.
Is there anybody else that would like to come up and speak? Or I guess, here, let's try this one.
Good afternoon, I'm Linda Larson, 17374 Road G in Cortez. And I just wanted to say also I support and appreciate your efforts to protect public land for multi-use. I'm here as a member of the Mesa Verde Backcountry Horsemen, and we'd like to see some protection made for horses in this area. I understand those trails were originally developed by horse people for horses and riding. Some parts of them, I believe, were. And access is difficult. There are no signs designating any particular rules for people on horses, and bikes can be dangerous to horses. It would be good for the public if they had some education efforts out there to say bicycles need to behave in such a way that protects and is safer for the horses. And we'd like to see some parking designated for horses as well. I don't know, I know you've said multi-use in your 1041. I don't know what your plans are for allowing or enabling horses to be out on these trails, but I know they are out there, and it creates a problem sometimes. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Linda. Right.
Thank you, Commissioners, for this opportunity at this hearing to speak. My name is Stan Mattingly, 35987 Road, J.9, Mancus, Cedar Mesa Ranches. Here Commissioners, that you say that this piece of Phil's World is very valuable to our local community, and I agree very much so because I do use that resource. However, I would like to see a firm citation in that manner as it relates to, as you say, the economic and the specific value to this community. It may be a point as we go later for any other 1041 proposals that you might set a precedent if you're vague on that point. Somebody else brings a specific economic study to you. I think that would be helpful to have a citation in that. If you have a specific citation or a study that would back your decision up. So the other question I have is, again, from a precedent standpoint, is there a seasonality of this application? So that might be something to be included in the resolution to make sure it's clear that it's a full-time type of declaration, so that you're not vague on that point. And then it appears to me, final point is, so the 1041, again, I heard what the previous testimony said, that I'm unclear about the zoning, the process, how this is going to be melded into the zoning process, and if there will be room for any additional areas to be proposed, or how that process will unfold. So I guess, in short, I'm asking if Phil's World is kind of being the template as we're feeling our way into this. So I don't know if that bears more discussion later today or as we move along in the public input period. So thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Sandy Simons. I reside at 17642 Road G. And I also am a member of the Backcountry Horsemen, and so I'm here to support that in this proposal and looking at extending the boundaries for Phil's World or increasing it, that you also look at having better trails or safe trails for horse people also. Right now, it's very restrictive to horse people, and this whole community has a lot of horse people that like to get out and ride. Backcountry Horsemen works very closely with BLM, and we go out and we clear trails and we help make new trails and whatever. So right now, it's not very friendly for us to get there and put in horse trailers to even get out there and look to see if anything needs to be done to help with that. So I would look to ask you to make this more friendly in your further research on what to do with Phil's World for the equestrian community.
Are you suggesting, ma'am, Sandy, that the horses are on the same trails then in the same parking lot, or are you talking about wanting to put the horses maybe in the upper parking lot?
I'm fine with the upper parking lot. You know, I mean, I think that's, friendly enough there. I'm talking about actually being on the trails, and I don't see any signage with that triangle that says bikes defer to hikers and to horses. So I don't see any of that type of safety type of signage out there that I have seen, and I think that's a very important one. Phil's World is a very, very well-used bike facility, cyclist facility. A lot of equestrian will stay away, but I have seen even on the Front Range where they've made this work in such very high-density type of, parks. And one of the things to maybe consider is, if it gets really high density, to have days that are restricted for horse use versus days restricted for bicycle use. Or I've seen it where they have parking only for the horse community from like 8 to 12, and then it's open, so people with horses can get there in the morning and get out or whatever, or have certain days that they know and can ride safely on the trails. And that's a very common thing to do on the Front Range now because of it being so crowded. And I think, from what I understand with the economic viability of this, you're looking and hoping that it becomes more crowded and more useful to bring more people in. And I think that could be very helpful and safe.
All right.
Okay?
All right,
Thank you.
Sandy.
It's me again, Betty Ann Colner, 17001 Road 24. I didn't think I was going to speak for this, but I would like to put in another word, and I had said something at an earlier meeting for us pedestrians and runners. I really, really like to get out, and I don't go to Boggy Draw anymore because it's very scary with the bicycles. So I hope that you could look at how you can make this safe, and it sounds like from what Sandy was saying that other communities who are very crowded are able to do that, and I hope that you'll take that into consideration as well. I would love to be able to go out there and not feel like I'm going to be run over or, you know, cause an accident myself because I'm moving more slowly than anybody else on the trail.
All right. Thank you, Betty.
My name is Chris Easton. I live at 1812 Rampart Street in Cortez. Members of the commission, it would be helpful for me and perhaps other members of the audience if you could walk through the area that is proposed for the 1041 protection. I'm not clear from the map. I can't tell if the existing trail system is being protected or if it's additional area that will be called in. I think the assumption is that it's Phil's world as it stands, but again, it's a little hard to tell from the map. So
I think she's going to, Chris, bring up a better map.
I am.
Essentially what it is all of the BLM lands, continuous BLM lands, and state ground that makes up Phil's world. It's like an island.
But the extension too.
Yeah, plus the expansion, the proposed expansion.
Yes, plus the exposed expansion.
and in surface area terms or whatever, how big is the proposed expansion?
Actually, we should have those numbers, but
It's in the, it's 2,300 acres, I believe.
2,300, 700 acres of state land or something like that.
Yes. It is 2,400 acres of BLM managed land and 730 of state.
And Leanne, what is the existing area of Phil's world?
I'm trying to get, I'm really trying to grab this, really, I promise. Be patient with me, I'm trying. I grabbed the wrong thing. Where am I, Melissa?
Is the expansion about double, about the same size as the existing infrastructure?
Well, the existing's, I mean, a fraction of it, I mean, that, the existing was actually there is the 730 acres, and with the expansion of the BLM, that would be an additional 2,400.
May I add to that
That
just a
isn't
little bit?
right.
Do you mind me saying something?
Yeah.
That
That isn't right.
This isn't just for the trails of Phil's world, it's actually the whole BLM. So even where there isn't trails, it's included in this resolution.
That's correct.
So it's where the trails are now, plus where we're trying to add the trails, but even what's outside them to the boundaries of BLM, if that makes sense.
One follow-up question. Is this area equivalent to what's proposed by the BLM for protections under the master leasing plan, or are those two entirely different entities?
Are you asking, does Phil's world fall within the boundaries?
No,
of
I
what-
know that it does, but it's a sizable increase. Is what Dennis is saying correct, that the only reason that the additional area is being set aside is for future recreational purposes, or is there an intent to protect a large area of BLM land that might be considered for inclusion in the master leasing plan area.
And you kind of confused me with
Yeah.
that, Chris, but it will obviously all fall within the master leasing plan if that indeed does go forward, which that's still debatable at this time. But it is setting aside a special, I guess it would be, from what I conceive of it, a special recreation area of BLM property that has already been exemplified by the amount of recreation that's in there now, the expansion that's going with it. So I think the idea is to incorporate all those BLM lands since you've got so much of it already being used for recreation, to keep all that BLM land that's contiguous with Phil's World as recreation. And it'll still fall under the master leasing plan if that ever comes to pass. That may not ever come to pass. They may just look at that and say, we're gonna stay with our RMP. We've got plenty of regulations in our RMP. We don't need another layer of regulation. And then this would be a BLM set aside within their RMP that already exists as a special recreation, noted as a special recreation area.
Okay, thank you. I was looking for some clarification. I hope that helps people understand the scope of the expansion and whether there is any relationship with the master lease plan.
Well, there is no master leasing plan right now, so I don't
Right,
think
I
it's fair
understand.
to say how this relates to it, because there is none such
Right.
right now.
Or,
So-
I guess I should say some of the proposed areas and designations that are considered within the master leasing plan.
Well, we don't have
Which
a
is a
master
draft.
leasing plan. Yeah, thank you. A
Yeah.
proposed master leasing.
Right, which
There
is in the works. That's very
Well,
clear.
it's
in
being
the works.
debated. It's
Yeah.
being talked about. It's not necessarily.
Well,
in the
there's
works. It's being
semantics,
talked
you know.
about.
It's either being debated or in the works, one of the two. Thank you, sir.
Anyway, protection is protection, and at the very end. So that's what we're trying to do, is protect it at a local level, which we feel is part of the course versus back 3,000 miles from here. So, anybody else, would they like to? No, Dennis, come to.
Dennis Giesler, live on County Road H. First off, I'd like to thank you guys for jumping on this and for our planning committee. I didn't realize until I started going to their meetings that actually, I thought this was brand new out. It's not. We're way behind other areas of the state that have had these safeguards in effect for years and years and years. So not saying anything bad about previous councils or your councils, but it's just something that we didn't know about. So not that this won't totally block anything from happening to us in the future. It'll sure help us out with a little bit of ammunition. I have to say, when coming to the meetings with the planning committee, with their jumping on this and trying to get things moving, I was pretty impressed. Trying to get different things done with the government, with even expanding the trails in different areas, and it takes years and years and years to get a ball moving. I think what these guys were trying to do was say, hey, we don't want this just to sit here until actually we don't have it done and we needed it done. We're going to get it going and keep the ball moving. So maybe it's been pushed a little bit too hard, but it's trying to get it going and get the word out there. So I'm glad to see that. As far as Phil's World and horses, and not that we don't love horses, because that's part of our community. I never knew of Phil's World being part of the horse community too. The way it was designed, even from the beginning, I thought it was mainly strictly bikes, and there is hiking there too. But I will say that there are a lot of roads out there. They're kind of all over the place that I would think would almost be better to ride on as far as horses than what the trails are. So that to me would be a plus. I do know that a lot of people do ride horses up at Boggy Draw and that area. So I don't want to try and exclude horse. In fact, maybe that might even be something that we want to start adding some trails specifically for horses. I think we have enough room out there. But I did want to acknowledge that the planning group has been working their tails off on this and trying to get things out and find out what else is going on in our state that we can use to help our area. So thank you guys for your support too.
Thank you, Dennis.
Do you have a map to show? That's it. That's pretty much.
Try to keep it at 3 minutes, I know.
You see all this paper.
Yeah.
Okay, Dennis Atwater, 20325 Road 25, Dolores, Colorado. And I would just like to speak in favor of the commissioners passing this resolution to take the power of areas of state interest that is theirs under the law. And in regard to some of the questions or concerns that have come up here, I'd just like to read from the law very briefly that part that gives the county the authority to do this under the law. And it's 2465.1-201. This will help go to some of the things that have come up about people saying or trying to exclude gas and oil exploration and extraction and so on. And what it says in here is if the local government having jurisdiction, after weighing sufficient technical or other evidence, finds that the economic value of the minerals present therein is less than the value of another existing or requested use, such other use should be given preference. And so as that goes to oil and gas, I believe from my information there have been about 8 exploratory wells drilled out there. First one was drilled in 1921. The last one in 2001 or 2. Those are all dry holes. And so the use that is currently under, and there's the interesting thing about this property is it's private property, it's BLM. So we have both of those interests out there, and it's state land as well. So we have all 3 of those. And that's an excellent laboratory for this county to start this area of state interest, because it teaches us all how to work together with the different agencies that we're so involved with. So I would like to see you pass this resolution. In terms of Phil's World being able to go forward, they've been trying to do this. They've been to the BLM 4 times now, over many years, trying to get this moved forward where they can just do something that's going to benefit the economy of this county. And this county needs to be looking at that, especially with oil and gas really turning the curve here and starting to decline as a part of our benefiting our economy. And so we need to look at these things. There can be multiple use out there as I see it. It's an excellent area. I haven't heard anything here said about the importance of Phil's World to the economy, but it is recognized as one of the leading biking places in the world, and is written up that way in the major publications on that. So, to stay in my 3 minutes, I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate it.
My name's Ellen Foster. I live on County Road T in Dolores. I also support the County Commissioner's efforts to protect Phil's World from the impacts of oil and gas development. Including 1041 powers in our land use code seems to be a very useful tool to protect many areas and activities of state interest, and deserves proper public hearings and extensive discussion. And my points are more specific to the actual draft that was posted. Have several questions. I'll just put them out there. I'd like to know when you will schedule public hearings for designation as an area of state interest, adoption of the regulations, and issuance of a permit. The statute, C.R.S. 24-65.1-404, states that after a matter of state interest is designated, no person shall engage in development in such area, and no such activity shall be conducted until the designation and guidelines or regulations are finally determined and a permit has been issued. So my question is, if you adopt a resolution that designates Philsworld as an area of state interest without adopting regulations, will Philsworld be closed until the regulations are determined and the permit is issued? The fifth paragraph of the draft says, whereas uncontrolled development will adversely affect the economic and recreational experience. Could you explain what uncontrolled development would be? Philsworld is located on BLM land and is controlled by the Resource Management Plan and the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission. If the county commissioners feel these regulations are not adequate, a master leasing plan might offer added protection. And item 2 under therefore be it resolved says this designation is restricted to uses that will provide the community with a multi-use open space area for recreational activities. How will other uses such as motorized vehicles and horseback riding be addressed? And finally, I'm very curious what additional authority the county will have to regulate private land under 1041. Thank you.
Is there anybody else? Yeah, Sean?
Hi, Sean Gregory. I live on B.6 in Dolores. And I guess I was just putting myself up here because I'm very familiar with the area and the bike trails. I wanted to point out too that I've been involved with almost every foot of Philsworld bike trail, and it was built solely by mountain bikers, and nothing was existing beforehand. So I just wanted to point that out. But and then also I wanted to point out is one thing that makes Phil's the bike trails such a famous. I mean, if you Google it, it's well known. It's full of pages and pages of information on it. Is that it's kind of like a little roller coaster for mountain bikes, which nobody likes a roller coaster that goes a couple miles an hour. So the fun part of it is going faster. So that's we see the kind of interference or safety hazard of being on the same trail with horses and things like that. So, but obviously, we don't want to exclusively have it just for mountain bikers, and it seems like there's a lot of area out there for everybody. The proposed trails are some of them are different than what Phil's is right now with the kind of roller coaster aspect. Would be more suited for hiking and horseback riding, especially unfortunately some of the areas that are maybe not going to happen or the best for hiking. But and then another point I wanted to make is down in Farmington, there's a trail system down there that's really, almost non-existent now, since they have all the oil and gas roads and things everywhere down there. It's because of all the roads they added, there's a lot of OHV use and on the trails, even though there's signs all over. But it's just kind of turned the trails into roads, which is no fun for a biker or hiker perspective. And I guess one thing I wanted to point out is I don't know, the BLM is kind of landlocked on the south end there because the state owns the land there. I don't know what kind. I've never done any research on what oil and gas, if they could even get through that on the road that everybody accesses Philsworld on anyway. So I just want to point that out because to get through from the north on Road L is pretty impractical, and we've routed all the trails in a way that there is a huge network of roads out there, and we've routed the trails in a way that we try to avoid the roads because nobody wants to ride next to a road and look at it. They want kind of a feeling of being out there in the middle of nowhere and not be looking at a road right next to them. So to add more roads, I mean, we went to great lengths to avoid the roads that are there, which are everywhere. I'm not sure how even more roads could, if oil and gas was in there, could be put in without really interfering or degrading the trail system that's already there. And let's see, just a note that the bike club leases all the state, not all of it, we share it with the gun club. And the access road goes through, and the parking area is actually leased by the bike club and maintained, and all the work's done either by getting donations and or just volunteers. So yeah, that's mainly what I had to say. I don't know if there's any questions about any of that you guys would have.
I know who ran the cattle on it before the bikers showed.
I figured.
My father. So there wasn't the horse trails that you're talking about. It was open range for cattle, and then lower in the bike, they started putting in the bike trails.
Well, I guess I should point out too, there's not been any talk of the ATV trails that designated. They're already up there, and they're off of Road L, and nothing north of L that I can think of.
Yeah,
But is there?
There is one off of 30, what is it, 31?
Oh yeah, that's right. Just the south side of M. Yeah. So there's a whole network of ATV trails out there too already as well. And so far there hasn't been any conflicts. So thanks.
All right. Thanks, Sean.
That map, could somebody wave a hand over what's going to be included in the resolution?
Yeah.
Just the contiguous
So
part?
All of the
it's
brown
this,
and all of
all about and up.
But what about the piece to the lower right there?
that is private
This one?
property, and
Well,
it is colored.
is that BLM to the corner to the lower right of the?
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking, is somebody show us?
Yeah, these colored parcels are BLM. This is state.
No, to the lower right there, there's a tan piece also, or Keenan, to the lower right.
Bottom right.
There, yes, is that included? Is that BLM land? It's tan colored,
Yes.
Yes, that is.
is that included in the resolution?
Yes.
Yes.
Is it?
Yes.
And the two small quarter sections that are contiguous?
I'm trying to get that other map up here for you really fast
It'll
again.
show you the
Yeah.
exact boundary, yeah.
That would help me.
Yeah, I hear you.
Sorry.
There you go.
So, and just to make sure that you see, so it'd be that, but not any
Not
of.
that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that helps me. Yes, thank you.
All right. Is there anybody else that would like to speak before we close the public hearing? Yes, Chuck.
I guess I have more of a question than a statement. Chuck McAfee, County Road 20 in Lewis. John's early comments made me wonder if this hearing is a properly called hearing. And so I'm very much in favor of protecting Phil's World, and I hope something like this can work. My only question is, are we at risk of not being able to use this because it wasn't properly called? Or do we have to do it all over again, or what are the next steps? I'm confused, and I'm sort of a process-oriented person.
So my suggestion was to continue this hearing because nothing has been published for 30 days yet. And so we don't necessarily have to do it all over again, but there has to be another hearing after that 30 days if anything's going to be adopted. So, there probably will be another opportunity to comment.
Okay, thanks. I just don't want it to go off the rails because it hasn't quite been done right. Thank you.
Could I ask another question then?
Just real quick, and then we're going to
Okay, I just want to ask then, if there is going to be another hearing, a public hearing for comments, will that draft resolution be changed by then? and more detailed, or is there going to be something for us to look at that's different from what's come out thus far?
It should be at least a little bit different from what that draft is. I mean, I'd hope to be a little bit more finalized than that. And it's not to say that it has to be exactly the same as what might be adopted at the next hearing, but ideally it should be. That'd be great.
Just from all the comments and questions today that have come in, whether those would be included in that.
It depends how they want it drafted and what exactly they want done, but
They being
the
you.
commissioners,
Okay.
the decision
Okay.
makers.
All right. So I hope that all this would be heard, even though it's not.
All a matter of record.
That's why we're here.
Okay, great.
So a good next step seems to me, there may be two things. That this HB 1041 become part of the land use code, and then an application's made by perhaps the bike club. I'm not quite sure how, I don't know how you incorporate then the rules and regulations and guidelines and permitting procedure that is outlined in the state statute about 1041, because it does talk about permitting procedures after an area of state interest is designated. Then you have activities of state interest that have the permitting guidelines that go with it. So there's sort of two steps, it seems to me. Maybe we can combine them into one, leaving the door open for more 1041 designations in other parts of the county, perhaps. But I think there's sort of two parts. And I don't know how you plan to address that, or if I am wrong. I don't know.
I think what we have been trying to do is just combine it into one, but I don't foresee the bike club having to apply for a permit. So what the county can do, what the county can't do, which I think, at least I don't know how the county can do it, and I know there's been a lot of talk about it today, is I don't think the county can necessarily dictate rules about bikes and horses and OHVs. What they can do is protect it from certain things, like protect it from oil and gas development. But I don't know that the county really has authority to say there can't be horses there, or there can be horses there, and you're going to mix it on these trails. So the people that would have to, and another thing, sorry to digress a little bit. Another thing is the county can't prohibit oil and gas development, but the county can try to control it more and perhaps make it more difficult and make them go through the extra permitting process and whatnot. And so the people that would have to apply for a high impact permit and have public hearings and be facing stricter scrutiny would be mineral development there, not necessarily the bike club. I mean, those uses are all going to stay. That's not what would be prohibited. Development would have to be subjected to a higher scrutiny. But I think that, at least the way I envisioned it, is to do it all in one fell swoop and make the rules, basically finalize it. There wouldn't be some dead period of, okay, now we have to make rules for it later.
I just wonder how you can make it open so that we can have another time, another area of interest approved, and there's a process to do it.
I think it'd be another whole resolution designating a whole other area.
But for part of the land use code, then there would be a pattern to go by, maybe.
I think there's only going to be a pattern to go by for the designated area for this one right now.
So is it anybody else before I close this public hearing?
Chris Easton again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could we have a brief discussion about the relationship of the 1041 designation and the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission regulations, and whether there perhaps the state level regulatory authority might supersede what the county is able to do? Just what that relationship is, please.
able to make recommendations as far as mitigation if oil and gas development was to ever be proposed there. Like John said, you can't stop it. But we can definitely go in there and with this designation, allow us to enforce stricter standards than what are normally imposed. Stricter standards, even like COGCC standards, as well as our own, which those standards at this time are not, we can't foresee in the future what the problem areas are going to be, but knowing the area and how important it is to our community, we'll be able to go in there and look at each proposed development individually and hopefully come up with a way to mitigate the effects, the negative impacts that it would have for whoever's using the trail system.
Okay, anybody else? All right, we'll close this public hearing. Commissioners?
Yeah, I think it's good to continue this public hearing and investigate some of the things that Ms. Foster brought, the permitting process, some of the permitting ideas that I'm unfamiliar with, and refine our draft and have John and us work together to refine that and have another session of a hearing, a public hearing, and then hopefully be able to formalize something at the end of that.
Yes, we do need to. What was,
It has to be to a certain date and time certain,
right,
correct?
we wanted, what did you say, February 22nd?
Well, the 22nd is the first available
Do
time.
we have time on that date?
It's in the afternoon, sir. She's got,
I would just, before you do make that motion, just a couple of things. I want it to be clear that the 1041 is not on the private property. It's only on the BLM and it's on the state land. That was one of the questions that somebody had asked, Ellen had asked. And then another thing that was mentioned was about the speed and the process about what the commission, this 1041, which I believe it's been, I don't know, 2 or 3 months now. I'm trying to remember when this topic was first. Yeah, actually Betty was there, so a couple of months. Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving. I'm speaking for myself, but this commission, do you remember when the speed limit was 55 miles an hour and everybody drove 55 miles an hour, and then they raised it to 65 miles an hour and it felt like it was really fast, and then all of a sudden you're driving 65 miles an hour and it doesn't feel very fast. I believe this commission likes to get things done. We want to get things done in a responsible way that we don't make mistakes, but I think that if you ride along with this at 65 miles an hour for a while, you'll get used to it, and we'll get a lot of things done in this county. So, anyway, that's all I had to say.
I'm good. Would we make a motion then?
Continue this hearing February 22nd.
At 1:30.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second to continue this meeting until February 22nd. All those, a hearing to February 22nd. All those in
at
favor?
1:30.
At 1:30?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. Thank you, ladies and